Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
And here we go. Pros with Joe's podcast, season number 3, episode number 10, week number 10 of NFL action is in the books. And we are here to recap and break down another whirlwind of a week. With me, as he often is, one of the best doing it over at Green Screens Media. That's Mr. Jay Heinrich, Dr. William Cannon on Twitter. Jay, welcome in. Thanks for swinging through the podcast.
Eric, yeah, happy to be here again. A couple weeks in a row, sitting in the captain's chair, loving it, feeling good about it. Crazy week again, like you said last week. Aaron Rodgers must have watched the show last week and heard me say that he was washed. But I could also not have counted on the fact that the Cowboys would blow a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter for the first time in their entire franchise's history. But alas, here we are, ready to talk some football, some waivers and stuff with our guest today. He is the senior editor at footballdiehards.com. He's also a host over at SiriusXM Fantasy. You can find him on Twitter at footballdiehard. Our guest at this time is Bob Harris. Bob, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Jay. Thanks for having me on. Hey, Eric.
Hey, Bob. Really appreciate you swinging through and spending a little time on the podcast, and also really appreciate your participation in the league. I think this is your second time around.
This is my second time around. Not quite as good as the first time, but we're working hard and trying to remain competitive each and every week as best we can.
That's all you can do. You're not going to win them all, but also it's not a done deal for you. Before we get into some of the back and forth of the league, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about the charity that you're playing for and the type of work they do out in the world.
The Gary Sinise Foundation is a charity. So I've been familiar with it and kind of knew what they do and helping veterans and in dire conditions. And so then my parents live in Tucson, Arizona, and I was visiting, and there was a big event, and right up the street from them, they live out in the country, and so I kind of was going, what's going on here? Flags flying, all kinds of things going on, and big crowd. And it turned out that they had just built a house for Gary Sinise Foundation. Had just built a house, and we're setting it all up. And so I kind of started looking into exactly what it is they do, and it's phenomenal. I think the thing I like the most about it is, if you go to Charity Navigator or whatever, you'll find that they are all the money goes to the people that they're helping. They're really good at that. I think I want to say 99% or some ridiculous number percent of all the donations go to the people who need them most. So a great work by Gary Sinise, and so love the cause. So happy to hook up with that.
Yeah, Bob, it's one of those things where in a time where a lot of people need a lot of help, when you look around and you look at some of these charities and you kind of like, man, like where do I want to give? I want to help out this cause. And it's like, well, where's that money going? And it sounds like Gary Sinise's charity does a really nice job of making sure that money gets to the people that need it. So kudos to you for playing for that charity. And hopefully you can get on the good side of things here and work towards winning that money for the charity. Now, so as we mentioned earlier, Bob, this is your second year in the Pros with Joe's League. This is a unique setup. There's not many leagues like this one where you have your quarterback and then you just have a bunch of flex plays and you can really go any direction that you want to. So,
right.
So what has your experience been like through here, a year and a half of Pros with Joe's? And also, aside from the flex stuff, there's a co-manager, obviously, right? That's the part of the gimmick. So what's your experience been like with Pros and Joe's, and what's it been like to work with your co-manager?
So this year, Rocco Cacciola has been phenomenal. Sean McGinnis last year, also fantastic. Both put in a lot of effort. Like, I have a very hectic schedule. They're very understanding of that. Rocco this year has just, there's back and forth. I was just texting right now with Rocco a few minutes ago. But there's a lot of back and forth. And at this point, I think Rocco's kind of, taken control on the free agency and stuff. We both are in on it, but he's really been aggressive and gotten us some great players. Some of our players are getting healthy right now. But it was the same experience with Sean last year, nice back and forth. all, I think they get in knowing that I'm going to be pretty well swamped and, oversaturated and, and still I am, but still I want to make time. It's great, talking to to the partners. And what it reminds me of is what I've always thought, right? Since I've gotten in this business, or since I, first started doing this, is, everyone can say, "Oh, you're a fantasy expert." No, I'm not. My job is making other people's experts. And what I find is, everyone is an expert. All these partners that I've played with, I don't think they're like outliers here. These people are really into this. They pay as much attention as you would imagine they pay attention. I think that's the thing that's great about fantasy is, everyone has that, that competitive edge, competitive nature. Look, there's some people who are going to stumble in and, not be as into it or get started and not know what they were getting into. But once you get committed players who are into it, they're as dead set on being, as well informed as they can be. They're on top of things. They're aggressive and assertive when it comes to free agency, setting lineups, willing to take chances when it's time to take chances. When Jonathan Taylor is not getting the job done, you got to do some other things. And so it's been great there. And also this, the all flex thing has been very interesting this year. And I'll learn some lessons from this as well.
So you mentioned that your guy Rocco is the one that's mainly at the helm for your waiver ads. Let's talk about the guy that Rocco added this week, went out and scooped up Trey McBride. Obviously, Zach Ertz is down for the season with a knee injury, so opens things up for McBride, the rookie in Arizona. Wanted to kind of get your thoughts on his sort of outlook, his prospectus for the remainder of the year.
Look, there's, there are other bodies there. Steven Anderson's there, and, Max Williams on the practice squad. They've liked Max Williams in the past, but I think McBride is the guy that you would expect to come in. Rookies can get a little overwhelmed, but we're well into the season. He's got to pick up the blocking and be able to handle that. But there's no questioning his receiving ability and the usage of the tight end in this offense. I mean, this is one of those targets of opportunity that you have to go after and be quick about. And Rocco did this one, all on his own. I didn't hear anything about it until I saw the waivers come out. I went, oh yes. I mean, there's been a few times he's done that. Earlier in the year, there was a lot more, we were being a lot more strategic and, there's a lot more meat on the bone on free agency, right? Early in the year. And there's a lot to talk about. Now there's like, a guy a week or two guys a week. And Rocco doesn't hesitate to go out and hammer those nails down as quickly as he can. And I appreciate that. We both work the lineups. I'll go in and I'll check the lineup. And, if I see something that say, hey, sometimes we'll both just change. And, I'll just text him and say, hey, made a change. He goes, oh, yeah, totally agree. Or he'll make a change. And I'll say, oh, yeah, totally agree. So it's been a really easy partnership with him. And like it was with Sean. I mean, just a lot of communication last year as well. And and it's kind of just enjoyable to see, how somebody else is viewing situations. I mean, everything I hear, like questions from listeners or, when I do the live streams on the YouTube channel, Football Diehards, all these questions. I mean, it just kind of reiterates. And I do a lot of lineups every week. I'm like in 30 redraft or dynasty leagues. And so setting a lot of lineups, you're making a lot of the same decisions. And so, seeing how people handle those decisions and what they're thinking about them, all very helpful to me.
Your Twitter handle definitely checks out if you're setting 30 redraft lineups a week. Yeah, well, that's pretty impressive, man.
I'm going to say I'm not really sure I want to be setting that many, but that's usually where it ends up every year. And every year I say I'm dialing back, I'm cutting back, and one of these years I'll make it so, but I haven't been able to yet.
I think we've all gone through that, man. Like where you sort of look at it and it's like everybody's version of cutting back looks different. If you're cutting back from 30 to 20 or you're from 7 to 4 or whatever it is, but we find time to do it, man, and we'll continue to do that. So let's step outside of the fantasy football world for a little bit. Now, this was a week in the league where some of these teams planted their own flags. Some, stepped up and are starting to separate themselves a little bit from the rest of the pack. If you had to pick a top 5 right now, 5 or 6, whatever you're comfortable with here, who do you look at as that top tier of teams right now in the NFL?
I think I'll stick with Philadelphia, despite the loss last night. I think a little bit of an outlier, although, it'll be interesting to see if other teams follow that same plan. It was a good plan the Commanders had, hold on to the ball, play keep away. And they did it really effectively with some really, I thought, good play calling, And Scott Turner's been doing some really good play calling this year. Whether regardless of the success, he schemed up some plays for some guys that I've been interested in and been able to use. Curtis Samuel kind of knew the plan going in. But anyway, Philadelphia, I think, is at the top for me. KC is right there. You're never going to count them out. I'll go ahead and throw a Miami next. Like every damn thing they do, right? Every single thing. And, Mike McDaniels came in with that kind of, weird energy and swagger, and the players are really totally into it. They've bought in. And you know what? It's easy to buy in when you have success. And, he's stuck with Tua. And you look at the level of play of Tua. I predicted, we do the magazines way back in, May and June. And, I nailed, tagged Tua as my breakout quarterback for the obvious reason. The pieces they put around him and the coaching staff they brought in. It's great to see it come to fruition. I'll throw Minnesota next, surprisingly. And not surprisingly, they're up there, but yes, surprisingly, they're up there. I mean, going into the season, I wouldn't have expected it, but the level of play has been phenomenal. They're getting things done. Kevin O'Connell, another young coach, comes in with this good energy, and maybe some of these teams are going to start realizing, some of the retreads I think they are. I mean, I think you're seeing more innovative, younger minds come in. And I'll throw Buffalo in there still. I think the level of talent and, the explosive capabilities of that offense. And when that defense is right, I think they're up there. It's not been great the last few weeks, but, I think in general, I'd still expect them to be in the running at the end.
And so the Vikings there at the 4 spot, if you could guarantee that the entire playoff run was played at 1 p.m. Eastern, would the Vikings be
yes.
the number one overall team?
They absolutely would, right? As long as they avoid the prime time.
No prime time.
Prime time. Andy Dalton somewhere is going, what's the matter with prime time? Right. But yes, absolutely. They may be the team that interests me the most, just given the way this thing's going. When you eke out the close ones, I know like the Giants, I've been super impressed with what they've done. I've said all summer long, this offense is going to be better, but we should set temper our expectations a little bit, because it's a very low bar. They were so bad last year that, better is not necessarily mean phenomenal. I don't think it means phenomenal either. I mean, it's, totally Saquon Barkley dependent. They don't have a lot of other pieces that are getting the job done other than Daniel Jones. And I'm sorry I forgot up the bandwagon, Daniel. I've sent in a new application to be at least the conductor on the hype train, if not the engineer. I think I lost that job. But yeah, I like what the Giants are doing as well. I mean, it's just it's always the key here is landing the right coach. According to the Denver Broncos, that's not easy.
Yeah,
evidently so. So we'll shift back here to more of the fantasy context heading into week 11. Bob, I want you to plant your flag firmly in the ground. What is your boldest take? What is your boldest prediction heading into this upcoming week?
So if it's just an NFL prediction, it's Detroit gets a win over the Giants. I'll go ahead and plant that flag. Look, the momentum has built, right? The kneecaps are being bitten. Things are happening here. And I kind of like the energy they have. And the Giants, this is almost just one where I think the Giants are due, right? I mean, I think they've run this thing out pretty far. They're due for a loss. So I'll go ahead and plant that flag right here and now. And feel pretty good about it, actually. I'm not worried about that at all. I mean, if we're looking at fantasy, numbers, I'll just go ahead and, what can I throw out that's like really off the wall? That's totally crazy.
Let's get weird.
I don't want to go that weird. I don't have anything super crazy. I'll just say let's go with this. Devontae Adams is without a doubt the leading scorer going against Denver, a very tough pass defense. I think this is a week for the Raiders to, for Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. If you've seen the emotion and seen some of the chatter they've had, I think they're out to spite beat their own coach.
It's interesting. I want to start with the Lions, with your Lions take first. I think that the Giants, they don't score a ton of points per game. They give up about the same amount of points. It's one of those things where you almost feel like the regress to the mean at some point, right? Like Danny Dimes is playing well. I agree with you there in terms of, because I was very much on Saquon at the start of the season, but not really as much on Danny Dimes. And I feel like that he has definitely shown that he'll earn himself a contract. I don't know if it's going to be with the Giants or if it's going to be somewhere else, with them declining that option. But let's actually stick with the Lions here, and let's move on a little bit to some listener questions now. Bob, let's go. We've got at Sean TG84 on Twitter. This is a 2-part question here. Do we have so standard league setting here? So are we going Deontay Foreman or Jamal Williams?
I'm going to go ahead and go Deontay Foreman here. Just Deontay Foreman. I like the workload. I don't see Chuba Hubbard cutting into it much at all. I still think, and look, it wasn't, necessarily Swift cutting into the workload. It was Swift and Justin Jackson both cutting into the workload. It's kind of a three-way split. Look, I love Jamal Williams. If I'm playing a Lions running back, he's it. But I just think in this case, I'll go ahead and stick with Foreman, the guy who's getting the bigger slice of the pie. I chase volume, right? I mean, there's, to me, that's, the mother of all fantasy production is, opportunities. And I like what Jamal Williams has done with his opportunities. I think they've been pretty robust, more so than probably people. Obviously, everyone was drafting DeAndre Swift as the number one guy. And you kind of thought this past week was going to be the course correction week, right? You heard Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator, he's mad that he's not getting all the touches. Okay, they're gonna rectify him. No, they're gonna punish him further. And you wonder about the level of health for him. So, and maybe we should have taken some clues from, like, I don't want to overplay the hard knocks aspects of this, but man, if you saw, the energy around centering on Jamal Williams, then maybe we should have had some clues, or we could take it back to the year before, right? When Anthony Lynn told us this is a 1A, 1B situation, right? And we all went, what? Get out of here, man. This is DeAndre Swift. No, it is a 1A, 1B. And now we can make a pretty reasonable argument that the 1A is not the guy we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point to make. And down here in Austin, big Deontay Foreman fan, got to see him play his college ball here, and knew what he was capable of. And a lot of it's fantasy, but it's also applied to the actual games themselves, right? If you don't get those opportunities, people in front of you don't, either get hurt or underperform or whatever. If you're not getting those opportunities, you don't know what could happen. And I like that Foreman call a lot. One more part of this question here for our guy, Sean, PPR between 3 players. We've got Eli Mitchell, Michael Carter, or Wan'Dale Robinson in his flex position. Who do you like there?
Wan'Dale, take a seat, young man, for number one. I mean, I think, some of the metrics there, show that at some point he's going to have a reasonable game. I don't need to, I can wait until he has it to start playing him. I'm going to probably go Mitchell here and assume they're going to continue that split. And just with this offense, what you think back to what Kyle Shanahan said about Christian McCaffrey. He's a force multiplier, right? And look, the way things are playing out, Christian McCaffrey is no longer going to be the player that we expected. A player and a half, right? A 30-point upside guy. He's going to be a 18 to 25-point guy, right? He's going to be a player, and that's great. And Elijah Mitchell can be the half, and maybe a little more, as we saw in this past game. So Kyle Shanahan says he's going to continue to share the ball pretty evenly. Mitchell has fresh legs. I'm fine with Carter as well. I mean, I do think he's going to be the kind of the leading edge of that duo there with James Robinson. But I like just the offense in general for the San Francisco 49ers, so I'll go that direction.
Yeah, don't mind that call at all. We've got our guy Austin checking in on YouTube. Always appreciate it when you swing through, Austin. And from the Twitter side, our guy Wag is contemplating a trade that they were offered, looking at Tyreek Hill to send out Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Jeff Wilson. So kind of a classic consolidation trade. Which side of that trade do you like, Bob? And generally, how do you feel about kind of consolidating your roster as we get into the playoff run?
I mean, it's obviously a wise tactic, right? Just, narrow it down, eliminate some of the decisions, make sure you have the premium pieces. I like the Hill side of this. I want the big piece, the league winner, which I think Hill can be, any given week. I like St. Brown just fine. been okay. Hasn't been as high end, and I don't think we're going to see the same level of production we saw down the stretch last year. I like Jeff Wilson too. I just think there's going to be weeks where it's Raheem Mostert. I know there's going to be weeks it's Jalen Waddle too, but I want that huge piece that's going to take me over the top.
I'm a big fan of, like you said, you get the guy that can win you a game at any given week. And like that to me is why I would definitely like the Hill side of this. I think you can see the upside in hanging on to St. Brown and Jeff Wilson there, but when you can get that winner, that week winner and league winner in Hill, I think you do have to go there, Wag. So thanks for checking in there. All right, our guy Baltimore.
Just quickly, I just want to say, some of this might depend on your roster construction. I'm assuming because of the, he's throwing those pieces out there that they are expendable to him, or he has other pieces around them that he can work with. It's not just like a willy-nilly go ahead and do this. It's like, you're counting on the trader to realize what his limitations are, but never against adding a huge piece.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. All right, our guy Baltimore J at Baltimore J1 wants to know Khalil Herbert. Now, obviously, we heard this. Herbert is on the IR with his hip injury, out at least the next 4 games here. So, who is the running back to pick up in that situation? Are you targeting somebody on the Bears specifically? Is it worth an ad, or are you looking elsewhere?
Is Justin Fields available? No. I'm probably not going to. If you have room on your roster and you want to make a speculative play on Tristan Ebner, go ahead. I don't know. He seemed like he was, kind of a buzzy guy in the preseason. So maybe with some opportunities, that's the thing. There's, I talk about this a lot. There are running backs who are going to win people championships that nobody drafted every damn year, right? Every single year of fantasy football. And so if you want to take a speculative play on a guy like that in a really good running offense, whereas, I've seen people and I'm not against, I want to take a swing at Kyron Williams because, nobody else is getting the job done. Well, also there's a reason nobody else is getting the job done in Los Angeles, right? The offensive line's horrible. There's a lot of things. The Bears, he jumps into an offense that's, pretty much going at speed. So I would take a speculative play on him and keep my expectations at a reasonable level, I guess, is what I would recommend. But why not? If you have room on your roster, grab that guy.
Yeah, I think if you're looking to answer the Khalil Herbert question, probably better off looking outside of the Chicago Bears and elsewhere on your wire. Before we get to our next Twitter question, we've got John checking in. John needs to make a decision between Christian Watson, Mike Williams, and Cortland Sutton in a half-point PPR.
I'd go ahead and play Watson this week. It's, just for starters. I don't chase those touchdowns because I don't know if he'll get them. Hopefully, I'm not chasing the drop passes. He might get those as well. But with Mike Williams, I think he's going to be back. Don't know he's going to be back. Cortland Sutton, he plays for Denver. That's a problem. I'll suss it out that way. Look, I'm a big Cortland Sutton, fan. I think he's a great player. Just doesn't seem to be a good circumstance yet. They don't seem to be able to get everybody on the same page. Now, Jerry Jeudy maybe going to miss time. They're calling him day to day. I think they might be lying about that. And so maybe he gets a little more opportunity, a little more bandwidth there. Because KJ Hamler, don't know what his status is either. So they did release Tyree Cleveland though, so I'm not sure if they're really worried about their depth at wide receiver. But anyway, Christian Watson, easy call for me in this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with them maybe glossing over the severity of Judy's injury, I should say. Went down, looked like his foot almost ripped off. He was in so much pain, and now he's day-to-day, right? So wouldn't be surprised to see him miss this upcoming week. John's got a bonus question looking to decide between Hawkinson or Kmet this week.
Boy, I like both these teams. I feel a little bit like we are chasing, the touchdowns with Kmet, and also he's been scoring the touchdowns, and it's against Atlanta. I'm going to go ahead and I'm still going to go Hawkinson and go with the volume, I think. But it's pretty damn close. They're both inside my top 10 this week.
Yeah, not a bad choice among them, John. Show Bob some love, hit that like button, drop us a subscribe as well so you can stay up to date with everything we're doing with the podcast. Before we move on to our next submitted question, I see a familiar face here backstage. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up. That is our friend JB Barry checking in. JB, welcome in.
What's up, guys?
Hey,
Eric,
JB.
Jay, thanks for having me. And of course, man, always a pleasure to share the room with my man, Bob Harris. I mean,
Yes.
I was listening to you guys earlier, Bob. I love how when Eric asked you about this league in particular and working with, other players, and you said, look, I'm here to help people get better. And back in the day, Bob, you know it. Back before I was even involved in this industry, I was listening to you. I was listening to Howard Bender. You were my guys. I was listening to you guys on the radio all the time. I was talking to you on Twitter. We continue to interact now that I'm in the industry. But, man, you are that guy. Like, you are a guy who just lifts people, makes them better. And now I'm a part of the industry, and I feel like, a lot of it was thanks to the help that I got from you, from Howard, guys like you guys. And, hey, Howard had me on his show a couple weeks ago, so now, I'm just waiting for an invite out to yours.
There we have it. All right. Make the note here. JB, got to get JB on.
But really, Eric, Jay, this guy right here, you know it. Like, Bob is a legend in this industry, and any opportunity I get to even share a screen with him is awesome. So I appreciate you guys.
Very kind of you to say, and it's been great. This whole, I do remember, like, you used to get the tweets on Sunday morning. Just always, you were always out there, and then I was happy, and it was great to see you, by the way, in uniform at the at Canton. So a lot of good time.
Absolutely.
So JB, we're gonna throw you right into the fire with these listener questions. Phil's checking in from Twitter. Wants to know whether we should consider dropping Eno Benjamin or maybe hang on just a little bit longer now that he's on the Texans practice squad.
If you're dropping him for somebody that you're going to pick up and use, then fine. But if you're going to just churn the bench, I would hold on to him, honestly, because we're going to talk about it too when we get into waivers a little bit. When you think about a team like Houston, they're not going anywhere. So if they look at Pierce as a guy they want to move forward with, as this season draws out a couple of weeks, he might tweak an ankle or something, and they're like, hey, go sit down. We're playing for next year. Let's bring up Eno, throw him in there, see what we got with him. So that could be a guy that, again, if it's a back of the bench type of guy, hold on to him. You might end up needing him in the fantasy playoffs or in those late week 13, 14 bye weeks.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's one of those things where, especially if you've got the bench spots, right? And there's always those guys at the end of the year when it's so crazy, and it's especially depending on how late your championship game is. If you make it that far, if you hold on to this guy, and like you said, Pierce tweaks something, they're not going to take chances with this guy. He already takes a beating and issues a beating as well when he runs. Stuff like that could happen, and they're not going to take a chance with their franchise running back. So I agree with you 100% there. I'm holding Eno as well. Bob, let me go to you here. We touched a little bit on Elijah Mitchell earlier. Our guy Wiz_Kid07 wants to know, how do you feel about Elijah Mitchell? Do you think he will be in a 50-50 timeshare, or what do you think that's going to look like moving forward for the rest of the season?
I think, we've heard Kyle Shanahan say he wants that to be that. By the way, I don't mean to correct you, Eric, but I think they claimed him off waivers. He's on the regular roster, Benjamin.
Oh, perfect.
I just double checked the transactions while we were chatting there. And
right.
He is. So hopefully he's buried and we never see him again, said everyone who has Dameon Pierce. I was talking about this on the radio last night. Like, where's a great place for him to go? Somewhere where he doesn't screw anybody up. But honestly, he wasn't, if he wasn't if he's not able to cut into James Conner's workload, I don't think Dameon Pierce needs to worry right now.
Right.
But who are we at? Who were you asking about?
Do we got a 50?
Mitchell?
Is Elijah Mitchell going to be 50-50, or what do you think that timeshare is going to look like?
I think, every 50-50 is 50-50 in theory. And, what happens in the game is going to, depend on what the players are doing. And maybe we just saw like a guy with super fresh legs come in and make a little hay, and that's how he earned his 50%. Kyle Shanahan says that's going to be the case. I think you go with that until until it's proven otherwise. And look, he did look good. He looked fresh. Also, because sometimes I hold on to things too long, I still have a few shares of him. I should have let him go right when they got McCaffrey. Now I'm glad I didn't. And we'll kind of see how it plays out. But I think he might be a usable piece. We see a lot of these situations, like I was, So someone was asking me about, well, what do you do with Leonard Fournette? And I said, well, you say hi, Raheem Mostert. I mean, you're in the same boat as other people, right? When there's a timeshare, I mean, we all want that true feature back. There's just aren't a lot of those going around. So timeshare is fine, and I thought he looked great. So I'll probably be playing him some in the next week or so, and we'll see how it goes Monday night in Mexico City against the Cardinals.
Yeah, it definitely feels like he's worth holding on to. I mean, look, from what I can tell, Kyle Shanahan doesn't really play a whole lot of games in the way that he responds to questions, the ways that he interacts with the media. He went out there and said he's expecting a near 50-50 split. So I think we take it at face value.
Back to Atlanta, when he was running that offense and he had a couple guys that, kind of could handle the job, Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman, both. And they were both viable fantasy options. So hopefully more of that to come.
Definitely.
Yep. So our last listener submitted questions coming in from King Harris, I'm assuming of no relation, wants to know your thoughts on streaming the Raiders this week. You mentioned the perpetual struggles of the Denver Broncos. That's who the Raiders will be facing off this week. Do you like them as a streaming defense?
Generally when I'm streaming defenses, I'm looking to pick on quarterbacks. That's the first piece of the puzzle, right? Okay, I haven't seen the Raiders do a lot of disruptive playmaking. That is another level of the streaming defense picture, right? I want some disruptive playmakers, and that said, there are issues on Denver's offensive line, and so this might be one where I would take a chance on a defense that's kind of been underperforming, going against an offensive line that's beat up, kind of diminished, and a quarterback who's not playing well. And all due respect to Russell Wilson, but somewhere Pete Carroll has just got to be snickering every single night, right? I mean, just like, well, I guess they should have listened to me. But whatever the case, it's just not. He's just not in sync with this scheme yet. So I would probably, I think this is not an unreasonable play.
Yeah, Bob, I agree with the fact that you want to target an offense like Denver's, but the fact that you talk about disruptive playmakers. Vegas actually lost their one disruptive playmaker in Divine Diablo a couple weeks ago,
right.
And he was all over the place, making tackles left and right. So when you look at the next couple of weeks, like King Harris asked us, I mean, maybe you stream them against Denver, but this is going to be a team that you're just going to throw right back to face, when they're facing Seattle, when they're facing the Chargers. So, I would do it with you this week, but without Divine Diablo, I can't really trust them that much.
Yeah.
One and done for those Raiders defense. Bob, before we get you out of here, say hi to Andrea. Andrea's checking in.
Hey, Andrea, how you doing? I see Andrea quite often and quite happy to see her.
Let everybody that's tuning in know where they can find all of your amazing work out in the world.
You can find me on the Twitter at Football Diehard. You can find me at a website called footballdiehards.com. It's a great place, and there's some great people working there and contributing stuff, including Eric Romoff. Don't sell him short; he's very good.
I know him.
Yes, he's super fantastic. Catch his DFS lineup show with Jamie Calandro Saturday nights at 9 p.m. on the Football Diehards YouTube channel. Find me on the YouTube channel noon on every Saturday, doing an Ask Me Anything kind of thing. Just sit there and chop it up and discuss things. Wednesday nights I do one as well. Catch me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, the pregame show, and all those nights at 10 p.m. Also catch the Saturday night on NFL and Fantasy Channel on Sirius simulcast from 8 to 11.
Bob, you do all that stuff and you still have time to set 30 fantasy football lineups.
No, I don't have time to set 30. Well, I have time to set the lineups. I don't have a lot of time for waivers. Hence, a lot of shares of Elijah Mitchell still.
Love it.
That's why he's a legend, Jay.
That's right. That's right. Thanks a lot, Bob. We appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you having me on. And
appreciate
you guys doing this whole thing. It's been really a great experience the last 2 years. I look forward to doing it going forward much more. Really having a blast with it, and it's for great causes. So love what you guys are doing.
Absolutely pumped to have you on board, and we will certainly take you up on that. We will make sure that you don't make good on your promise to cut down leagues. We will always put this one in your inbox every year.
Well, fortunately, I got partners who run the show. It doesn't matter.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, I'll be waiting for your message, Bob.
There you go.
Got it.
Hey. Thanks again, Bob. So, JB, we got you in a little early while we were in the middle of our listener questions. I wanted to give you a proper introduction, Mr. JB Berry. Check out all of his work at Razball. You can check him out every week on the Fantasy Besties podcast. And you can check him out on Twitter at Fantasy Coach JB, Mr. JB Berry. now that we have all of the pleasantries out of the way, before we get into some waiver wire talk, we've actually got a number of questions stacking up here. We'll go back to our guy, Austin, has a trade question. Looks like he's considering a choice between Amari Cooper for Chris Olave or Devontae Smith straight up in Dynasty. So 1-for-1, position for position. You do have the Dynasty wrinkle. Which side of that would you go for?
Chris Olave all day long. Give me all the Olave I can get in a Dynasty league. And if I only have to trade Amari Cooper for him, gimme.
Yeah, I would be rushing to that accept button, Austin, if you haven't already. You're gonna get comparable, if not better, production out of Olave, and he's measurably younger. As JB's showing off the gear, my guy.
You didn't even notice it. I was like, I purposely wore this all day. I was waiting to rock it on the show. I was waiting for you guys to be like, yo, nice shirt. And I just had to be like, hey,
hello.
Man, it was a little tough with the 4-box, but now that we got you here in the spotlight, it shines through. It's a little cold where I am for my shirt, but glad that the gear is out there. One more question coming in from Darius. It sounds like everyone's trying to fit it in right before the trade deadline, looking at trading Waddle, AJ Brown, or Hopkins for ETN. So it sounds like Darius is needing some help on the running back side. Which of those 3 receivers would you ship out?
That's tough. Because those are all guys that I really like. And when you think about it, right? So you look at that, and if those are his options to trade for ETN, he's stacked at wide receiver. So he can afford to trade one of these guys, and probably hurting for running back if he's that stacked at wide receiver. So of the 3, I would probably look to trade Hopkins for ETN. I think that Waddle is in an offense that's just clicking on all cylinders. And AJ Brown pretty much is too, with a little hiccup yesterday. But that's the guy. He had a quiet game last night, but that's not going to continue. Hopkins is on an offense that's struggling a little bit, a quarterback who's injured, and we don't know what we're going to get out of Kyler. So I don't know. I would trade Hopkins there if I'm going to trade for ETN from a position of strength at wide receiver.
I agree 100%. And when you look at, sorry, Eric, when you look at like you mentioned the hiccup last night, it was only his second game of the year where he was under double digits scoring in PPR. Yep. And you just look for that consistency, especially as you get deeper into the season. And I love him rest of the season. I love Waddle rest of the season. And I think that's definitely the right call. And if you can if you can trade Hopkins for ETN, then I mean, that's another guy though that in an offense that he's going to give you those weeks, right, where you have that sort of 12, 15, 18 points, even in standard, where the guy's just going to have his days. But so I think in terms of that value, the consistency you get out of Waddle and Brown, you hold them and you trade Hopkins. I agree with you there, JB. So let's move right on in. So let's talk waivers now. Before we get into some pros with Joe's waiver talk, obviously those waivers run on Tuesdays. That's another little wrinkle that makes these leagues a little bit different. Who are some guys that you're targeting on the waiver wires, especially for those of us that don't have Tuesday waivers that are running 2:35 a.m. or whatever? Who are some guys that you're targeting this week on waivers?
Well, I'll preface by saying that my number one target is not because I'm a homer, but it's going to be Rachaad White. And Rachaad White, if he's still available, which he is in many leagues, go run and make him your number one waiver claim. Spend your fab on him because he is taking over that backfield. Now, that's not to say that Leonard Fournette is going to disappear. He did have a little injury, but it's not significant. He'll be back after the bye. But I do think that White has taken a path to being the lead back in that split backfield. He started this week, and it wasn't just by name. He's been looking like the better back, the more explosive back for the last few weeks. And finally, the coaching staff is giving him the opportunity to show it, and he's continuing to show it. So while I don't think Fournette's going to go away, I think White becomes the 60 or the 65 in that timeshare. So Rachaad White is the heavy priority waiver that I'm looking to pick up. Isaiah Pacheco is another running back who's kind of taking over the lead back duties, but I'm tempering my expectations with him because the running back in that offense historically doesn't really do much. We don't see much of that. And another guy that I'm looking at, Kadarius Toney, I'll kind of put these guys together. I think he's the type of guy that they're going to scheme plays for that they normally would give to a running back, right? So you saw the touchdown pass that he had that he hopped on one leg down the sideline was out of the backfield. He kind of came out the side of the backfield there, took a little screen pass, took it to the house. So those are the type of plays that I think are going to go to Tony and not to Pacheco. So I think that Pacheco could end up being the lead back there, but I think there's more juice to the squeeze with Kadarius Toney there if you're going to look to pick up one of the Kansas City Chiefs in waivers.
Yeah, especially with so many kind of lingering injuries within that Kansas City wide receiver core, not only get the uptick of Tony potentially stepping in to grab some of those, but also get a couple of gadgety plays out of the backfield. So definitely not mad at that call. I want to look forward a little bit, right? A lot of times when we're talking about waivers, we're talking about guys that you can grab now for free before they are, 50% of your fab guys like Rachaad White or like Kadarius Toney. Is there anyone this week that you're looking at, JB, that is really more of a speculative ad that you think is going to pay dividends? Maybe not in the immediate term, but kind of in the stretch run.
Yeah, there's a couple actually, and one of them actually could pay immediate dividends, and it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's a guy who's getting the targets right now, and I think he's a stash for the stretch run because you think that he's going to get an upgrade at quarterback coming in the next couple of weeks, right? We don't know what we're going to get from Watson, political views, whatever stuff aside, right? Like, he's supposedly coming back to play quarterback, and he's supposedly a better quarterback than the quarterback that DPJ has right now. So if you think that's the case, pick him up now. He's getting targets. He's getting targets already. He had 9 targets this week. So pick him up. He's a plug and play that you could use as like a bye week fill-in right now, and he could get better over time. A guy I am picking up and I'm not playing now, but I'm stashing is Julio Jones. Again, not a homer pick, but what I'm seeing with my eyes, I'm seeing what they're looking to do with Julio Jones is kind of play him in a Gronk-type role, where they're going to limit his snaps. They're not going to have him running routes all day long. He's still going to fall behind Evans and Godwin, but they're going to use him on high leverage plays. They're going to use him on plays where they need a guy to get open, where they're going to scheme something up for a particular player. They're going to have Evans drawing attention, Godwin drawing attention, and boom, here comes Julio across the middle of the defense, wide open, to the house, touchdown. I don't think he's going to have a 10-target game, but he's a guy who I think they're going to draw these plays up for, that even in a 4 or 5 target game, he's going to score a few touchdowns as this offense starts to get better. It's starting to look better, and I think coming out of the bye, they're going to be looking to run plays like that for Julio. Last one I have. Go ahead.
No, jump on in.
The last one is Deion Jackson. And to the point that I made earlier about Houston, I think I'm going to stash Deion Jackson a little bit in case Indy says the same thing. The Jeff Saturday thing is nice. I had a little rant about it on Fantasy Besties yesterday. I'm Team Saturday. I want him to do well, but he's not going to. The team's not going to do well. They're not going to go on a run now and start taking the world by storm. So after they lose a couple of games, if Jonathan Taylor's not healthy, they're going to say the same thing. Hey, buddy, take a seat. We're going to look towards next year. You're our guy. We don't want you to get hurt. Have a seat. Something hurts, right? Yeah, something hurts. Go sit down. Deion, you're in, right? So I'm going to stash him for that reason.
I love the idea of there being some collusion in the NFL where every team week over week just hires like a TV personality with no coaching experience to go beat Josh McDaniels.
That just tweeted the week before from their couch how trash that day looked,
Exactly. Just can't wait for that to be the case. And I'll set aside your homerism for Julio Jones. Don't look now. I think your guy might actually be healthy. Next Gen Stats always has a bunch of fun stats out there, clocking guys' top speeds. Julio Jones on that touchdown run clocked over 20 miles an hour. He was the 6th fastest wide receiver clocked in week 10, and that is him being older than dirt. So if he's healthy, they're going to look at him in these high leverage situations. Definitely don't mind that call.
But that's because they're being smart with it, Eric. They're not having him run around back and forth all game. They're limiting him to plays that they want him to go, and when he's out there, he goes.
Yeah, still got a little gas left in the tank. Let's shift gears and take a look at the waiver run for the Pros with Joe's League. We'll start in the season-end conference. This is one that had 8 different players acquired, the most expensive of which was Trey McBride for $11. Michael Bandy went for $7. Will Dissly also for $7. Ben Skoranek for $5, Nick Westbrook-Akine for $4, and then we have a pile of freebies: KJ Osborne, Keontae Ingram, Matt Ryan, and Tyler Conklin. So a couple of names that I want to get your thoughts on specifically. Let's start with Michael Bandy. It looks like the Chargers might be welcoming at least one of their wide receivers back this week. But even if that's not the case, or even if it is, what are your thoughts on Bandy as a deep waiver wire target?
I think they're a little late to the party on Bandy here. You know, Bandy would have been a play with both of those receivers out, and I don't think that with either of them coming back this week, and both of them are trending towards coming back sooner rather than later. So I don't think Bandy will be playing meaningful snaps, you know, especially with Palmer out there. And, you know, there's guys ahead of him in the pecking order. He's just kind of been the number 3 by default because there was no one there. So I think we're a little late to the party for Bandy here. I do like the kid as a player, but I don't think he's going to have significant playing time with the healthy receivers.
And then the $1 million question before we get over to the next conference. Ben Skoranek went for $5. Obviously, the fantasy football world and certainly the Rams passing game is reeling in light of the Cooper Kupp news. Who do you think, if anyone, stands to emerge or kind of take the biggest step forward with Kupp on the sideline for about a month or so?
Nobody knows, dude. We need to watch, and that's why we're just going to pick up all these guys and hope that one of them pans out. You know, I'm kind of hoping it's Van Jefferson. You know, I think that Skoranek is played well. He's had touchdowns. He's done okay. But, you know, if you look at traditionally, right, if you look back at the history, even going back to Detroit, right, like this is a quarterback who finds one wide receiver and locks into that one wide receiver. It's been Cooper Kupp. Now it's not Cooper Kupp. Now we have 3 guys that it's like, which one's it going to be? We have no idea, dude. So, like, we're just going to throw waiver money and fab money at these guys and hope that one of them hits. So I'm hoping it's Van Jefferson.
Well, and we're going to talk right now about maybe why you have a rooting interest in it being Van Jefferson as we move over to the Comic-Con, the comic conference here. There were 10 waiver ads in the comic conference. 2 of them belong to you, and they were right at the top with Van Jefferson for $28, Tyquan Thornton for $11. Also added were Keontae Ingram for $5, Kendall Hilton for $4, Hayden Hurst for $3, as well as Samaje Perine for $3, Chenault for $2, Randall Cobb for $1, my guy Davis General Mills for free $99, and Justin Jackson also for free. So let's start right at the top. You spend $39 of your fab budget to go after Van Jefferson and Thornton. Why was this the time? And you needed almost every penny of that to get Jefferson, by the way, because there were 7 bids, and the next closest one to you was 23. You bid $28. So why Van Jefferson? Why now? And is it as speculative of an ad as you just made it sound like, or do you really feel like that Jefferson could be that guy, especially over the next 4 weeks at least, while Kupp is out, to help carry a team, you know, into the playoff picture?
Yeah, and the bid for Thornton was also close because I think the next best bid was $7 or $8, so we were close on that one too.
Right, 7.
Yeah, so to answer the question about Jefferson, I do think he's better than Skoranek. So I think that, you know, he has a better chance of stepping up and being that guy. He has some established rapport already there. So, you know, maybe he just steps back in and becomes that guy with the rapport. The question of why is because did you look at my team, Jay? We have Tua, Etienne, Ken Walker, Marvin Jones, Tyler Lockett, and Jalen Waddle on bye. Like, literally, my whole bench is bye week. It's all bye week. So, like, it was now or never. And we're in a spot where we just reeled off 3 straight wins before last week. We lost. We ran up against the Justin Field buzzsaw. But we were making a push for the playoffs after – our quarterbacks were Tua and Dak. So, like, we were rolling out Carson Wentz for a couple of weeks. Like, it was bad. We were getting decimated by injuries. But then we started coming on. We got our quarterbacks back. We got Ken Walker in the spotlight. And we were making a run at the playoffs. Now we had a little setback this week, but we're still right there. We're just right outside of the playoff push. So Joe and I were talking today, and we're like, dude, we need to spend our fab right now because we need to have players that can get into our lineup this week and help get us a W because we can't afford to lose another game. So we spent our money. These were the top guys that we thought were on the wire to produce for us this week. So we had to spend to get him, and I'm glad we did because we just barely got them both.
Yeah, and with the way that this is set up, with the division winners both advancing and then the top three right after that, you guys are just right out of that playoff picture right now. A lot of parity in your conference with a lot of teams at 6-4 and 5-5, and like you said, there's not a better time than now to spend that money, especially like you said when you're looking at buys, and that's something that I think. When you look at that, and if you're saving that fab budget up and you maybe missed on some guys earlier in the season, take those chances, right, on some of these guys that, like you said, nothing's a guarantee, but you're looking for those guys right now that can be that have the best chance to be impact players, and I think you did real nice with Jefferson and Thornton there.
Appreciate that. And you know what? Neither one of these guys might play moving forward. We just need to get through this Bimageddon week, get all of our starters back into the lineup next week. And hey, maybe Jefferson or Thornton emerges as a guy who we can plug into the lineup. But if they do their job for us this week, Jay, then it's money well spent.
There you go.
Survive and advance is the name of the game. And you are on the bubble right now. You're the first man on the outside looking in on total points. So definitely can't have a subpar week. Got to plug in and fill those spots where you can. We'll move on to Nintendo, another conference that went and added 8 new players. A lot of familiar names here, but the one up top is the first time we'll mention him. Deshaun Watson goes for $6. We've got McBride also going for $6. Your guy Thornton goes on the discount, gets scooped up for $2. Chris Moore goes for $1. And then we've got Matt Breida, Scotty Miller, Keontae Ingram, and Matt Ryan all going for free. So this is the first time that we've been able to discuss Deshaun Watson. Let's jump in there. Obviously, we'll stick to the analysis for the on-field play. He is returning to the Browns here in a couple of weeks. We got to see a moment of him in the preseason. Realistically, JB, what are your expectations for his on-field performance when he returns in Week 12?
You know what? I don't think he's going to be that much of an upgrade over what Jacoby Brissett is already giving them. The guy hasn't played he hasn't played a real game in almost 2 years now. So, yes, he was great when he did play, but he also was prone to make mistakes. I mean, you have memories of him throwing interceptions at the end of the game and like sitting on the field pouting about it, right? Like he was good, he was great for fantasy, but he wasn't the guy that put his team over the top, right? So especially after sitting out nearly 2 years, I don't know that he's going to bring you that playoff push that you need. Now, this person who picked him up here probably picked him up as a QB2, as like, okay, let's hold on and see. So maybe they already have a QB1 that they're relying on, and that's where I would pick him up. In a one-quarterback league like this is, pick him up, stash him on your bench. If you see a couple good weeks out of him, then, hey, maybe you could use him in one of your playoff matchups if you're confident at that point.
Yeah, definitely going to be a roll of the dice, whether or not he can actually move the needle for someone. The other player that I wanted to talk about a little bit, we sort of discussed the circumstance a little bit, but that's Keontae Ingram, right? He's now number 2 on the depth chart behind James Conner. James Conner, a guy that has been injured a lot this year and kind of over the course of his career. Any interest in Keontae Ingram there?
Yeah, I don't think he's great, but I think he's a guy you want on your bench. I mean, especially for free. I'm surprised he went for free there. James Conner, like you said, has an injury history, and to me, I think he's mentally a little soft too, because like he's the type of guy you saw it earlier in the year when they were down a couple touchdowns. He was like not interested in playing. He was like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm going to sit out now. Like took his helmet off and just stood on the sideline. So like he's the type of guy that like doesn't have the fire. I feel like I don't know. I don't want to say he's not passionate about the game, but when you see a guy do that and like take himself out of a game when you're down 3 scores, and then they made a comeback and he puts his helmet on, he's like, all right, I'm ready to go now. It's like, nah, dude, go sit down. Like you weren't ready to get in battle with us when we needed you. Now you want to get in there? So I think he's the type of guy that I would want his backup. And, if Keontae is the only guy in town, yeah, I'd put him on my bench for sure, especially for free.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's one of those things where those bench stashes can win you titles at this point in the year. And if you get a guy that you feel like is even close to being able to contribute and you've got space on the end of your bench, why not? Especially if they're that cheap, like you said. One more conference here. We're going to move over to the Sandwich Conference. We had 6 waiver ads here. Foster Moreau for $15. There were actually 5 bids in on him. Trey McBride for $11. Demarcus Robinson for $7. Zacchaeus for $4. Justin Jackson for $2. Marcus Mariota for free there. Do any of those stand out to you as somebody that could contribute? And in a bubble, obviously, without looking at everybody's rosters and seeing, bye weeks and things like that. Do any of those stand out to you at this point in the year as somebody that might be able to contribute like this week and or rest of season?
Yeah, I mean, the tight end position is a nightmare, and even more so now with the injuries that we saw this week. So, to grab Moreau and McBride at the top of that, I'm not surprised to see them up there as the highest dollared pickups there. People are looking for some sort of solution at tight end. McBride's a guy who can step into an Ertz role. He was kind of drafted to step into that Ertz role once Ertz is gone. So now it's a little bit accelerated now. And Moreau, I don't know what to expect because it's not like Waller was doing much before when Waller was there, right? Before he got hurt. So I would like McBride more than Moreau, even though Moreau went for more money than McBride.
Definitely feels like McBride's got a good bit of upside. It's untapped, right? He is a rookie. It can certainly go the other way. Usually tight ends take a bit of time to get acclimated to the league, but I mean, if that athletic upside clicks, if he plays a similar role to what Ertz is leaving behind, certainly can contribute in a considerable way. That's going to do it for our waiver section. Before we close out the show, JB, one more time, you want to tell everyone in the world all the things that you're working on, where they can find that work out there?
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me on Twitter at FantasyCoachJB. You can find my written work over on Razzball. I do a DFS article every week, DFS Flash, right here on Razzball. That's right.
Shout out.
You could also find us on the Fantasy Besties podcast every Monday night on the Razzball YouTube page as of this year. It's a great show, Eric. That it's a great group of people. Me, Andrew Cooper, Kevin Tompkins, Lindellians, Jordan Loop. We have so much fun on that show. I know Eric's been in there. He was in there yesterday in the chat. So we just love talking football and hanging out. Like, we're just friends that like to talk football and hope to help people at the same time. And we go get waffles in the morning and Eric doesn't join us. So, next year, bro, you can't miss the waffles.
I'm still mourning those waffles. My hangover from Canton is still not passed because I just didn't get those waffles in, right? And it's my curse until we get out there next year. So definitely put me down for some waffles. Anyone else out there that's going to be in Canton, you got an open invitation to come get some waffles with me. I'll just lean into this waffle lane.
There you go. All in right here.
So that will do it for the Week 10 recap episode of the Pros with Joe's podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you're following our guest who's still with us, Fantasy Coach JB, on Twitter. And if you are somehow not already, definitely go follow the legendary Bob Harris at Football Diehard. If you want to learn more about the work that we're doing with Pros with Joe's, if you want to learn more about the various pros that are participating, the causes that they are supporting, if you want to pick up some fresh merch like our guy JB is so beautifully displaying down there, all of that information can be found at our website. It's proswithjoes.com, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.